Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 130. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here on this Tuesday. And I know it's only been a couple days, but good to say that again. He's Dave Bryan. Dave, welcome back to the show. How was your vacation?
Oh, boy, I need a vacation from my vacation now. Got wore myself out pretty good, but yeah, I got to go up towards the Portland area and see some of my wife's family up there, and I went chasing waterfalls up there. So we went on a nice tour and saw some waterfalls while we were there, some other sightseeing up there, and it rains a lot up there in the Portland area, but I think we timed it perfectly and had more dry weather than wet weather overall, and flew back in from Portland yesterday afternoon. A little bit of delay initially, but I got in safe and sound and ready to get back at it and go over some of these busy transactions and all the Steelers have had.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's kept us busy over the last couple of days, yesterday in particular. So let's jump right into all the news that Dave and I have not been able to cover since our last show together. Pittsburgh exiting their rookie minicamp, which was held this past Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then on Monday, as the team traditionally does, announced their roster moves, exiting rookie minicamp in Pittsburgh, made a ton of them, signing 4 tryout players. They are defensive lineman from Arizona, Trevon Mason, South Carolina cornerback Carlin's Platel, Wake Forest kicker Nick Skiba, and East Carolina wide receiver Tyler Snead. In corresponding moves, the team waived wide receiver Rico Bussey and kicker Sam Sloman. They terminated the contract of veteran outside linebacker John Simon and placed or waiving injured undrafted rookie free agent Bryce Watts out of UMass, who apparently had an injury during rookie minicamp. So a lot of moves there, and obviously the focus now is on the 4 tryout players signed to the 90-man roster. Yeah,
we talked before I left how many of these guys were going to how many tryout players would end up getting signed there. I figured it might be I think 2 somewhere around in there, and lo and behold, they got 4 of them there. A couple of names that or at least one name that not a huge surprise because way back during the pro day tour there, when you spotted Danny Smith at the I believe the Wake Forest pro day there, you tweeted and I think talked just briefly about who was it, Nick Skiba. Is that how you pronounce his last name? But you had already known a little bit about the kicker there, and the Steelers obviously going to carry 2 kickers through the summer. They already knew a lot about Sam Sloman from last season, so they figured they'd get a little bit extended look of the Wake Forest product there. So not a huge surprise there. Trevon Mason, when I saw that come across there, and you look at the measurables on that kid, that's one of those height, weight, speed kind of signings there when you look at him initially there. So going to be interesting to see if there's anything there for the Steelers to develop as kind of a defensive end / defensive tackle type. Carlin's Platel, I don't know much about him other than what you wrote up about him, I think, this morning on the site, of South Carolina product there. I'll have you talk a little bit more in depth about him. And Tyler Snead, the undersized wide receiver out of East Carolina, when I got home last night, did a little bit of research on him. One of those jitterbug kind of wide receivers, slot wide receivers there. They used him a lot in some trick plays. I think he probably averaged, the last 3 seasons, something like, 50 catches or so at East Carolina. I think he had somewhere around, what was the number there? I want to say around 18 or 19 receptions that resulted in 25 yards or more during his college career there. Probably not the most athletic specimen, but he does find a way to get open. Had a lot of nice catches for them. And oh yeah, for someone that's like I think he's like 5'7", 5'8". Nice arm on him. They have a couple of trick plays. They used him with giving a ball in the backfield and letting him throw a pass. And one of these passes that he threw had something like 38 air yards on it, and it was right on the money. Led the wide receiver and all like that. So some interesting names there. John, obviously to make room for him, cutting loose Rico Bussey, Sam Sloman, probably not a huge surprise with either one of those guys. John Simon, the veteran outside linebacker. He's long in the tooth and all like that. Kind of wondered if he'd stick around all summer there. So he's out the door there. And then Bryce Watts, obviously one of the 10 undrafted free agents that the Steelers signed after the draft. I'm guessing that was some sort of knee injury or something, I would guess, over the weekend there. They waived him injured. I would expect today that he would clear waivers and then revert to back to the Steelers IR there, and we'll wait and see if they do any kind of injury settlement with them. But to have a guy waived injured before June 1st, yeah, that kind of signifies maybe he had some sort of serious knee injury, but that's just speculation on my part. But what a flurry of moves, and tell the people a little bit about the kicker and the cornerback there out of South Carolina, Alex.
Sure. Skiba is interestingly the second most accurate kicker in college football history, just based on field goal percentage made. He sits at 89.9% in his career. That's a tenth behind the leader, which is Brett Baer, I guess is his name, back in like 2012, who had 90% in his career. So Skiba won 23-25 last year. Not a big guy. Obviously, he's a kicker. The size doesn't matter quite as much. I don't think the leg strength is immense, but he was a super accurate guy overall. And as you said, Danny Smith at his pro day, so pretty clear connection of why he was invited in the first place, and obviously looked better than Sloman. Apparently, well, not that Sloman was a rookie minicamp, but Skiba looking better overall just in their evaluation. With Platel, that's an interesting guy. He started his career, spent most of his time at Assumption College. He played outside corner there, and then they didn't get to play in 2020 because of COVID, so he transferred to South Carolina for 2021, became their, you can call it starting slot corner, but in the SEC, you're facing so much like 12 personnel, you didn't get to play that role a whole lot. So in the tape I watched, he'd be playing 10, 15 snaps in an entire game. But he was a slot corner this past year, 21 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, both of which came against Kentucky on run plays. So physical dude, hard hitter, has good ball skills, finds the ball, attacks the ball in the air well. It's just a lack of the athletic tools. He ran in the 4.6s. His agility times were poor. You see some of that stiffness and tightness in his hips on tape, and the lack of top end open field speed. But decent size overall, just under 6 foot, $194. They can play in that slot cornerback role. So interesting guy that I thought had some decent tape.
What do you know about Trayvon Mason?
Really what you do. I mean, and Jonathan has the report you guys can check out on Steelers Depot, but the size, and we talk about how hard it is to find a guy that looks like the 3-4 defensive end. And Mason fits that bill, being at 6'5" and 5'8", 290 pounds. The length is not great, but it's 32, I think, and 5'8", which is about what Loudermilk has, actually. So it's not ideal, but it's about as close as you're going to get. So, and that's a guy that used his size overall well for pass deflections last year. Jonathan posted some cut-ups of him running to the football, getting up blocks in the run game. So, again, just trying to find that body type. I can see the attraction there and why he got the tryout and then ultimately got the contract.
All right, and Tyler Snead, I was on, what little bit I described to you sound about right on him?
It does. Yeah, that's the one guy that I heard about more than anybody else when I posted the rookie minicamp roster and all the track guys. There's a lot of apparently ECU and Tyler Snead fans out there. And that guy was really productive in 3 years at East Carolina. Was a returner as well. He's got 2 career kick return touchdowns. Didn't put up gaudy numbers there, but those were obviously significant impact plays. So, I mean, he's a small dude. I mean, he's 5'6" and a half, $172 at his pro day, and he didn't test all that well. Decent agility numbers, so he'll have to make a say in the slot there, obviously using that kind of quickness. But that's a guy that definitely had a lot of college experience and productivity, and that probably served him well this weekend.
Yeah, it looks like he understands the X's and O's part of it very well. Really sets up some DBs for some night. You see him get a lot of separation for sure out of the slot. They're kind of one of those guys that's kind of hard to get your hands on and all. And what did Mike Tomlin say over the weekend about guys like Calvin Austin and kind of what the traits are with them?
Yeah, he said if you're small, you better be fast and have speed. And now I don't think Snead does. Again, he ran 4.64,
yeah.
So he's small and slow. But if you're kind of a quick, shifty guy, that can kind of be the trait that he'll have to win in the way that Austin has to win with his speed. And obviously, he has that twitchiness as well. So I'm sure I'm waiting for the preseason Wes Welker comparison to Tyler Snead, because that just seems like something that's inevitable.
All right, and surprised that John Simon was sent packing.
I was surprised he signed a futures contract with the team way back when. I was like, what's the role? What's the idea here? And he took a little bit to sign. I think he just had no other options. So I'm not too surprised by that. We'll always have, Dave, those like 15 snaps last year of John Steinmetz finally coming true with our dreams of becoming a Steeler. And I'm very sad about Sam Sloman being released solely because now officially there is no Miami, Ohio player on the roster anymore. It was Ben and Sam Sloman. Ben's retired and Sloman's gone. So first time since, I guess, this time in 2003, it would be, I guess, last time no Miami, Ohio player was on the roster.
Yeah, if only they would have had John Simon like 3 or 4 years ago when we were suggesting them, that kind of thing there. But, you lose that experience with him, and obviously he had a lot of that. This is still a position, I think, that, they had obviously addressed, another versatile offensive lineman in Trent Scott, who we'll talk about here in a little bit over the weekend while I was gone there. And, kind of a typical, experienced offensive lineman that's versatile on the cheap. And then, but now they certainly, and this has been the case for a while now, they still could use an experienced outside linebacker on this roster.
They could, and I think you certainly could potentially see them sign a veteran. I think there are some veteran guys that are worth looking at out there, because I think depth there is still pretty questionable.
All right, of these 4 tryout players that are signed, who do you think has the best shot at obviously 53-man roster would be quite a long shot indeed there, but stranger things have happened. What about practice squad of these guys? Who do you think has the best shot of these 4 maybe sticking on the practice squad?
Yeah, obviously for a kicker and kind of the lesser series of the COVID years, it's going to be tough to get on the practice squad in Pittsburgh. So you look at the other 3 and they all would have a shot if they just simply play well. It's not as much about roster construction. I think Mason's size is unique and potentially worth keeping an eye on. Plateau might have some versatility and special teams value that would make him interesting as well. So you make a case for all 3 of those guys. For Snead, it might be a bit tougher path because of how crowded that receiver room is currently and just really how small he is overall. So I would lean Mason and Plateau, but again, you get these guys in camp and you see what happens.
Right, absolutely, and kudos to the guys for getting reports turned around on all these guys quickly.
Yeah, for sure. So those were the roster moves coming out of rookie minicamp. Dave, since you mentioned him a moment ago,
Trent Scott. Yeah.
Let's talk about Trent Scott. We talked about could this team sign a veteran offensive tackle, and they did. Over, I think it was Friday, whatever day it was, Trent Scott to a 1-year deal. No word on the financial terms of that contract yet. I assume that's almost certainly a veteran salary benefit type of deal.
It sure sounds like. I don't think it is hit the if it did hit the NFLPA, then it did with no signing bonus whatsoever, because the Steelers cap number hasn't moved. I don't even think since I left there. I think we're still waiting on a couple of those last 3 undrafted free agents to hit the NFLPA site as well. So they're obviously behind there. But 1-year deal for a veteran offensive lineman this late in the offseason. That really smells of a veteran benefit contract. And man, it probably didn't even get a signing bonus, and I think the max on him would have been $152,500. So we'll watch that the next couple of days. I know he already hit the transaction sheet, so him showing up on the NFLPA side will probably happen tomorrow morning there. But it's like I don't know, Joe Haig Part 2, right? Just an experienced guy that can play multiple positions. I think most of his experience, has come at left tackle, I think. at the NFL level, and at least it gives them another kind of veteran body to throw in the mix there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, first I was going to say by CBA rule, the cap is not allowed to change when you're not around.
Oh,
so
okay.
they have to keep it there until you're back. That was, I think Joe Corey wrote an article about that.
Well, it gives me a purpose to wake up when I am out of town to check those things. So I have purpose refreshing that NFLPA sheet while I am away. But
I'm sure Tiff is thrilled to hear that.
Oh yeah, well she knows it's par for the course to work to stay glued to the computer on the road when I shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, to Scott, he's played. I think it's been majority at left tackle. I would just say majority at tackle because he's gotten work at both tackle spots. He's played a little bit of guard as well, but I view him as a tackle. He's Joe Haig part 2 in the sense of the sequel's always much worse than the original.
Oh.
And Joe Haig by no means is a great player, but I would consider Scott to be a tick above like a Chaz Green. I think Jonathan did the report on him. Liked his run blocking. The pass protection has been pretty much a mess, though. The real reason why Scott is now Pittsburgh Steelers is that Pat Meyer is the new offensive line coach. And so Pat Meyer was with Scott in Los Angeles. Then Scott followed him to Carolina the past 2 years. And now he's following him to Pittsburgh. So Pat Meyer has an affinity for whatever reason for Trent Scott. And so that's basically why this signing happened.
And yeah, I think correct, right? Left tackle most of his snaps at the NFL level.
I think so. I think I just would call him a tackle and someone that has good experience at both tackle spots. I think it's been because he replaced Okung at left tackle for a stretch, I think back in 2019 or whatever year it was. And so probably right. But yeah, I think some people have called him a guard and he can play a little bit there. But based on the roster construction and his experience, he's really, to me, a swing tackle.
All right. They waived guard Malcolm Pridgeon to make room for him there on the roster.
Yeah, and Pridgeon was a camp ad last year that came on and off the practice squad. So that's Trent Scott. No one, number 4 tackle, some vet depth there. No one to get super excited about. And someone like Chaz Green, I do not really want playing any snaps in 2022.
And obviously don't want to see Haig have to play any either there. But, at this point, look, I mean, you never know what's going to happen the rest of the way here. And once we get past rookie minicamps on into OTAs, it's still probably not going to be out of the question to see this team add yet another player or two with experience that might end up making the 53-man roster when the dust finally settles there.
Yeah, sure. This thing's still fluid, and I don't want to assume that they can't or wouldn't add at some point until camp opens up in late July. So Dave, sort of working backwards here. 4 of the draft picks have signed already. The first reported one, and they all kind of came together the same day, was George Pickens. And then the last 3 picks have signed as well: Connor Hayward, Mark Robinson, and Chris Oladokin. So no real big discussion or fanfare there based on the new CBA that has all these slotted rookie contracts and things like that. Not a lot to discuss at this point. A little bit occasionally, but pretty cut and dry at this point. But Pickens and Hayward and Robinson and Oladokin have signed, so just waiting on Pickett and Leal and Calvin Austin.
Yeah, and I wouldn't think Leal would take all that long, especially as where he is slotted at in this thing. Now, Austin, as Joel Corey wrote, there's probably excuse me. With Austin, I'm sick. By the way, listeners, I'm sorry about that. Came down with something on the trip there, but Austin, there's probably a little bit to discuss as far as what's guaranteed and what's not. And, as we mentioned before I went out of town, Joe Corey wrote a pretty good article on that on CBS Sports on what's available to be negotiated with some of these rookie deals and all like that. And obviously with Pickett too. I mean, I don't think Pickett's going to sign unless it's a fully guaranteed deal, but where he is slotted overall, I don't see that being an issue. Although a lot of times when you talk about this time of year, usually the discussions really started around that 20th overall spot. But I mean, if I'm his agent, I'm forcing the Steelers' hand a little bit if indeed that's an issue. It might be more than anything. It might be offset language that they're talking about when it comes to them. Because I find it hard to believe that the Steelers won't be willing to fully guarantee the 4 years. It might just be offsets and God forbid split salary type things, which I would imagine that Kenny Pickett, being a first round pick, is not going to want to do anything related to any kind of a split salary should he have to be put on IR or anything there. So I think he's got most of the negotiating power in his hand. All that being said, the remaining 3 draft picks, all those guys should be signed, sealed, and delivered well before camp starts.
Right. With Pickett, I would expect a fully guaranteed deal just based on some of its position. I know he's kind of on the edge, but just given the nature of the position, that just seems the most logical and likely thing to occur. Dave, and then kind of working back to last Thursday, the NFL schedule officially released. My favorite time of year, as everybody knows, but we now know we already knew the opponents and the homes and aways and all those kinds of things. Now we know the exact week by week schedule. And so I know Josh and I walked through it kind of week by week on Friday as our initial reaction to it. Now that you've had some days to look at it and process it, what are your thoughts on the Steelers schedule?
Yeah, look, opening on the road. Here's the thing: eight consecutive year. Pirates got to cut the Steelers some slack here at some point. I would think here.
How do the Pirates impacted that? There's going to be 3,000 fans at PNC that day. How on earth is that really moving Pittsburgh out of the city?
I don't know. There's probably some sort of agreement or something like that. But anyway, yeah, 8th consecutive year now on the road. I mean, it's become a kind of a running joke now. But I kind of, when we went through about kind of the possibilities of if indeed they did open on the road, I kind of didn't think that the league would go the route of having an AFC North game in week 1 or around. I mean, I know it's hard to avoid overall league wide to not have at least a couple of teams play within division in that first week there, but and we did talk about the Browns and how the Steelers did have a little bit of a history of the Browns with actually open up playing each other, but and I believe this is the first time ever that the Bengals and Steelers have played each other in a week 1 game at that. So yeah, you have to open up on the road against the defending AFC champions, obviously the defending AFC North champions there, and who's going to be your quarterback and all the things that go along with it. I mean, that's a tough test, overall there, and AFC North ball right out of the chute with a fairly young team overall. So that's a tough draw there, if you ask me. New England. I mean, we all know about New England. This is kind of a, I don't want to say rebuilt because they have a lot of turnover usually year in, year out anyway, but got Mac Jones, another year, got a year under the belt with him there. And this is a team that's going to probably expect to challenge for their division this year. So you get 2 tough games right out of chute. Luckily, you get the Patriots at home, and then, oh boy, you turn around once again, and you're back on the road for another AFC North game against the Cleveland Browns, and who knows what's going to happen there. I guess more than anything, it might be, well, we'll see how the Deshaun Watson thing plays out, but really that's the only kind of maybe saving grace, I guess you would say, with the Steelers is that you would think that Deshaun Watson probably has a good chance of missing at least the first, 3 games of the season there. And if indeed that's the case, that's a heck of a time for the Steelers to have to get to play them and on the road at that, because obviously they'll play them a second time in Pittsburgh, I think, to close out the season on top of it there. So 2 of you, I mean, that's a kind of a tough road of your first 3 games, depending on obviously what happens with Watson. You get the Jets with a little bit more experience in the coaching staff there. You got to play that game on the road in week 4. You get the Jets at home in week 4, the Bills on the road, and then Tampa Bay after that. So I think the thing that jumped out to me most of all, Alex, is just looking at the first 6 games overall, for the Steelers. And Obviously, one primetime game in there against the Browns in week 3. The rest of them 1:00 starts. But that's a tough first 6 games overall for this team.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the schedule this year, and again, as you guys know, I'm not one to try to overanalyze things too much, but the early emphasis on AFC North ball. I mean, you play at Cincinnati week 1, at Cleveland week 3 on a Thursday night game, then you don't play the North again until week 11. But it's the first time, it's only the second time since I think 2003 Pittsburgh has begun the season with 2 of their first 3 games against AFC North opponents. 2014 was the other. So you don't usually see those games so early in the year, and that can really set the tone for how your season is going to unfold playing AFC North football, and those will be 2 really tough competitive games. So I think to me that's a really interesting part of the schedule. Is just you get those teams so early in the year, and of course what happens with Deshaun Watson, as you mentioned, is going to be something now Steeler fans are almost equally vested in as Browns fans are right now.
Yeah, look, and as I talk every year. And especially, I think it's going to be really, really true with this year's team. If the Steelers are going to make the playoffs and make any noise this year, they have got to go. They've got to go at least 4-2 in the division, in my opinion. There, and you get 2 of those 6 games in the first 3 weeks of the season. There, it would be quite the boom, I think, for this young team to come out of their first 6 games. And maybe at a minimum of 3-3 with at least 2, if you could beat the Bengals and the Browns and those 2 of those 3 wins there, I think I think they would still have a chance there. And obviously, where would the third potential win come in at? I would, just looking at it from we sit right now, which is dangerous to do because we've seen how quickly the rosters and injuries and whatever impact things throughout the rest of the summer here. But that New York Jets game at home at Heinz Field really feels like, of the first 6 games, of one that man, you might want to get that one there overall. And once again, your 2 early AFC North games are both on the road, so that's a bit of a challenge there. This is going to be a good test for this young team. Once again, first 6 weeks, I think I think it'll be telling if this team can come out of this first 6 games 3-3, and boy, it'd be nice if 2 of those wins were divisional wins. If you come out of this, at 3-3 with 1 or 2, divisional losses, that doesn't feel too good. And obviously, if you come out of this thing with a record less than 3-3 and a couple of AFC North losses, that's not a great start there, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I think when you made the point a moment ago about being 4-2 in the North, I mean, that's what happened last year. The 2 teams that made the playoffs from the North last year, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, were both 4-2 in the North. The Browns went 3-3 and the Ravens were 1-5. And there wasn't much separation in terms of total wins between first place and last place. First place had 10 wins, last place had 8 wins. But it was that divisional record, the AFC North record, that really made all the difference, 4-2 versus 1-5 at the bottom. So I think you have to at least split between the Bengals and Browns week 1, week 3. Of course, you'd love to win both games. To lose both games would be, I think, really detrimental, both for obvious reasons and then just to, AFC North play later on in the year. So I think you have to at least split those 2 games, and then, probably be around 500 after the first 6 weeks.
Right. And if you could come out of that first 6 games at 500 and, hopefully with a couple of AFC North wins underneath your belt, then at least right now, it doesn't look too daunting in week 7 and week 8, Dolphins and the Eagles, albeit both those games are on the road there. Boy, circle that Miami game, the homecoming of Brian
Flores. Yeah, I don't know how much of a homecoming it's going to be for him, but I get your point.
Yeah, and Minka Fitzpatrick, obviously, as well there too. The Eagles, obviously, interstate game there. And then the bye week in week 9, at least your bye week's right flat, in the middle of the season there. So I think if you could come out of these first 8 games, say 4-4 with let's say 2 losses, 2 losses coming maybe outside the division or outside the conference, and then once again, hopefully having a couple of those AFC North wins underneath your belt there, I think maybe you're setting up for at least having a shot at this thing and making the playoffs there. The best case scenario, obviously, you want to get to week 14, where your first game against Baltimore, and then week 14 on, 3 of your final, 5 games or AFC North games. There, you hope that you're in a position where all those games start meaning something there.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you get down to week 14 and you're, I don't know what, under 500, obviously those games loom even larger, and especially if you have not made any noise in the AFC North, because you will have played 3 games at that point. So 5 primetime games overall, I don't think that's overly surprising. I know the Depot crew is probably happy that there's the rest of these games are 1:00 Eastern starts, which, by the way, I think is 10:00 a.m. out here in beautiful hot Las Vegas. But if you can get to the point in week 14 where you're still in this thing, that's a good problem to have, because I think this is a pretty daunting first 6 game start for this team. We're going to learn a lot about this team, I think, in those first 6 games, because of the kind of the quality of competition that they face.
Right. The NFL seems to love the schedule where Pittsburgh plays Baltimore late in the season. Last year it was week 13, week 17. This year it's week 14 and week 17. So, and those games should mean a lot for all those teams, just in the way they did last year, because this is one of the more competitive and balanced divisions in football. It's going to go down to the wire, and those AFC North games that all those teams are playing in week 14, especially week 17, week 18, those are going to be extremely critical. So those games should mean a lot. They will mean a lot. And that's why the schedule probably is laid out the way that it is. From a just how cool perspective, the coolest game on this on the schedule is week 16 against the Raiders. Christmas Eve, Saturday night, immaculate reception, 50th year anniversary, Franco Harris. I'm sure other Steelers and perhaps Raiders will be there as well. I hope Josh said it well on Friday. I hope it snows. I mean, that's going to be just a really cool experience.
Yeah, and you hope it means something.
Right.
You hope you get to that point in the schedule. I mean, it's cool from a marketing standpoint. I think you could almost kind of see this coming as of 10 days before the schedule was released. There's starting to be a little bit of buzz about a potential of that 50th year anniversary of the Immaculate Reception happening, obviously in late December there. Now you just want to hope that you get to that game and it actually means something, because if it does, boy, the atmosphere there could be quite electric indeed, especially if the Steelers are still in this thing, because obviously you close out the last 2 games against the Ravens and the Browns there. So normally when I look at these things, I break them up into like quarters and all like that. I just, because of how young this team is, and kind of the, obviously the turnover at the quarterback position and the questions about the defense, how the defense is probably going to have to carry this team right out of the chute and throughout the season, mostly until the offense finds its legs, kind of thing. I can't help but just look at this schedule and look at the order of the first 6 games, and then just kind of leave it at that, to be quite honest with you. And really the second part of my analysis really is, can you get to week 14, that first game against Baltimore, and still, have things look like those are meaningful games?
Sure. Yeah. Again, I mean, so much will change. What's going to happen in week 5 from here till then. I mean, who the heck knows? So I don't like to think about those things too much, but certainly you want to, I think, get off to a decent start against the AFC North. I think overall it's a balanced schedule. It's not the easiest. It's not the hardest. It's kind of somewhere in between for me. The travel isn't that bad overall. The bye week's in a great spot. And so, I think it worked out well enough for Pittsburgh, but certainly, again, the AFC North early, that's kind of the number one thing I'm looking at.
I tell you, it'd be quite a statement like last year. I know neither one of us gave the Steelers a chance last year in that week 1 game on the road against Buffalo there, but they got that done. Be quite a statement for this team to come out AFC defending champions, AFC North, defending champions there, and make a statement on the road against Cincinnati right out of the chute. It would be quite a statement for sure.
The most surprising part of the entire schedule to me, Dave, is no Panthers in the preseason.
Ooh.
That relationship is apparently over. Pittsburgh will play, and I don't have all the teams in front of me. It's Seattle in their preseason opener, and I don't know how Seattle's coming all the way to Pittsburgh for a preseason game. That seems odd. But then Jacksonville week 2 for on the road at Jacksonville, and then hosting Detroit in week 3. Obviously, only 3 preseason games last year. Pittsburgh played 4 because they were in the Hall of Fame game, so the first year only playing 3. But even then, the Panthers had always been that final game. That is no more, which makes me a little sad.
Yeah, I almost wonder if this might be related to the 2 teams playing later in the season. But
it's happened before. They've been in Carolina. They've been doing this for 20 years.
Sure. And who knows? Maybe the one less game has played a factor in this as well too. But when was the last? Obviously, didn't have the COVID canceled preseason game. But before that, it was like 2004. Was it the last time that they had not played the Panthers?
Yeah, I'll have to look it up.
In the preseason there, I think I put that on Twitter the other week there. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
And I understand the concern about, play him in week 15, but I don't think Matt Rule's going to make it to week 15. So I think it'll be a new coaching staff Pittsburgh plays the second time.
First time since 2003, no preseason game against the Panthers, and obviously there was no 2020 preseason because of COVID and all like that. So yeah, that's quite a run there, and who knows? Maybe you would think with proximity. That's why, yeah, you're right. It's kind of weird to have Seattle come all that way for preseason game, but. Anyway, something to look forward to. Obviously preseason will be here sooner than we think. So, and camp now, I guess for about 8 weeks away. Is that right?
End of July should be. So something like that. Yeah. August 13th is the preseason opener. So count down the days till football's back.
All right. Anything else stick out about the schedule overall? Once again, I can't help but just looking at this thing from the first 6 games. And yeah, at some point we'll try to predict this thing by game and yada yada. But so much, you even if you put these predictions out there right ahead of week 1, and so much changes throughout the season with injuries and all like that. Mm-hmm. But once this thing was released, when I was on the road there, the first thing that kind of stuck out to me was those first 6 games. So I think that'll tell us a lot about the 2022 Steelers.
And I just loathe the NFL's drip trip of the NFL schedule, which they're going to increasingly do more and more every single year. I mean, it just release it all at once, please.
They're good at it.
They're good at it, and I hate that they're good at it. And then the leaks, and you got to find out what leaks are true and what's false, and it's just not my favorite thing in the world.
And I know we know at this point by tracking it so far of who to kind of trust. So many people got duped by those leaks or quote unquote supposed leaks this year, and just be careful with that.
It's not hard to you don't have to be a capital J journalist to know don't trust the account that just was created 3 days ago that had 5 followers. It was somehow tweeting out the entire schedule like that. That seems pretty intuitive.
You mean like one future Hall of Fame capital J was doing?
If I know, right? If you're thinking of who I'm thinking of, then yes.
Okay, all right. We won't name Ed Bouchette by name or anything.
No, never. Speaking of former Pittsburgh people, another subject that I'm loath to discuss: Antonio Brown is back in the news because, of course, he is. Who tweeted yesterday, just want to retire a Steeler. He did clarify that and said he wants to retire just to do the one-day contract thing, not to come back and play. Although I don't know if that was him trying to save face or what. So Antonio Brown, he's inescapable.
And just so happens that he has a concert coming up in Pittsburgh. How about the timing?
How did you even find that out? I don't even know how you knew that he had a concert coming up.
There's a reason for everything. And sometimes I try to for him to do that out of the blue like that, it made me kind of want. And I did think that I saw something a couple of weeks ago on Instagram that made me think, wait a minute, what is he supposed to be in Pittsburgh soon for a concert there? And as it turns out, that's the case. So not let's see, when is it? Friday, May 20th, which is this coming weekend. Imagine the timing of that. And Antonio Brown saying, "Boy, I sure would like to retire as Steeler." I think he's just trying to play some people to get him to come to his show, to be quite honest.
Are they going to come to his show because he tweeted he wants to retire as Steeler? Does that person exist?
I don't know. You get about 8 more people in there from a sympathy standpoint. You know, that's 8 more through the door. I guess there, but I wouldn't be surprised if a agent or a manager or promoter or something said, "Hey, you know, that might not be a bad idea to tweet that out." You know, that kind fair. Of thing there. But the timing is quite curious indeed. Look, you cannot tell the story of the of the Steelers through about 6 years there without talking about Antonio Brown. I mean, I just week after week, I remember kind of running out of superlatives to kind of describe the play of Antonio Brown. And man, he was on the top of his game for a period of years there, and I don't think anybody can dispute that. Obviously, his ego and everything else, the attitude and all that went along with it, makes you kind of wonder if he had humbled himself a little bit. He'd still be going strong, I think, to this day there. But now he's made himself so caustic, I guess, if you will, and makes you kind of wonder if there's even a team out there at this point, willing to take him on because of his attitude. And I guess now the big hubbubaloo is about, would you let him retire even on a 1-day contract and those kind of things. I tell you, he can retire and claim whatever he wants there, but I think there's got to be a lot more repenting and all like that that needs to go on before I would be on board with the 1-day contract kind of ceremony in June or July or what have you here, because this guy really had it good in Pittsburgh, and they moved money around for him. Obviously made him the highest paid receiver in the league at one time there. They paid this guy a lot of money. He obviously delivered his part of it there and put up amazing stats. And look, he wasn't the reason why this team didn't make it to the Super Bowl a couple of years there for sure. But with all that said, the way things ended with him, the he said, she said stuff, and just how he's acted since there. I mean, once again, if he wants to retire and call himself a Steeler on the way out the door, that's fine. But before there's any kind of ceremony or anything and acknowledgement that way, I just think there's got to be a lot of reconciliation that needs to go on, is my opinion of this.
Would probably need a good heart-to-heart with Tomlin, Rooney, etc. This is just the perfect off-season fodder story, and I know I wrote about it and talked about it and stuff like that, but this is just perfect, where it's a meaningless story. It really has no impact on anything. It's just something to talk about here in the middle of May. So thank you, Antonio Brown, for pushing the news cycle forward for us to give us a topic and an item here on the podcast today. I don't really care. I mean, would I do it? Would I bring him back for a 1-day thing? Not right now, based on how things are. But I think it just shows, and I understand he won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. I don't think AB cares much about rings. I mean, maybe a little bit, but he cares about being Antonio Brown and being the man and catching 120 passes and being the star of the show. But it just kind of shows that so many guys who left Pittsburgh we kind of regret it and always pine to come back, and some of them do come back. And so for AB to say this, for a guy who seemed to hate the organization and went out of Pittsburgh, obviously, and completely forced his way out of Pittsburgh and strong-armed the organization, to now say, man, I want to be a Steeler again just for a day. Just it's the same story. Everyone tries to leave, and people realize how good they had it in Pittsburgh, and AB had it great in Pittsburgh. He got a ton of money, got to kind of break all the rules and do his own thing, be the star. And since then, it's kind of been downhill again. He won a ring, but he's never been the same AB he was in Pittsburgh.
And look, he didn't, sometimes you see these guys, especially receivers in general, leave because of the free agency aspect of it, and you kind of wonder, well, they're going to see it,
Sure.
it's not greener on the other. The money might be a little bit more greener. But overall, is it greener to leave that way? And look, that's a business decision. What it comes down to, a lot of times, guaranteed. We've talked over the years about Steelers that can guarantee money, and you look at a guy like Mike Wallace, and look, even Mike Wallace never. At least Mike Wallace, when he left, there wasn't the the nastiness, I don't think. And now Mike Wallace, I mean, to this day, you see him on Twitter, he's a huge Steelers fan, and I think if you ask Mike Wallace tomorrow what his favorite time in the NFL was, he'd tell you it was with the Steelers and how he was treated with the organization there. Look, I understand things happen and all, but AB, that didn't have to go down the way that it went down in his final days, because obviously he had several years still left on his deal, and he pretty much forced the Steelers' hand to do what they to do what they had to do with him overall. And once again, if he had been a little bit more humbler, there's a good chance he might still be on this team.
Yep.
Right now at this point overall. But there was just, once again, he was out of Pittsburgh because of his own doing. It wasn't like this was a free agency thing or anything along those lines. And I think when and if that time happens that he does retire here in the near future, I think he's going to look back at this thing, another 5 years, 6 years from now, and think, man, I really messed up a good thing there overall. And I hope he's smart with his money and all like that. And look, I mean, his legacy right now, his play on the field's one thing, but you almost have. Is he a lock to make the Hall of Fame right now? I mean, his play on the field is for those whatever 5, 6, 7 years say that he is, but what about the stuff off the field? Is that going to be, and no, you shouldn't, judge a player that way, but it's hard to look away at some of this stuff off the field with him.
Sure, yeah. Is he a lock? No, he's not. And that's a shame, because he was supposed to be. We thought that he was, in his final years in Pittsburgh, that he was on that track for sure to be a first ballot Hall of Fame kind of dude, but everyone knows what's happened since it has kind of clouded and made us forget about how great that he was the elite of the elite receivers for 3, 4, 5 seasons. So yeah, grass isn't always greener on the other side is all I have to say about the situation.
Do you think he's played his last down in the NFL?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, there was the health stuff last year about, is he healthy? And he said he wasn't going to get surgery until a team signed him, which is not always how this thing works. I don't know. My guess is that
all it takes is one, though, right?
That's true. I'll say that he has, though. The fact he's talking about retirement might hint at something in itself. And the dude's about to be 34 years old. He can't stay on a team for more than a year without some sort of drama and antics to get some thrown off the team. I'm not sure who's going to take a chance on that guy at this point. Can this guy still play? Yeah, he can, but he's not the same. He's not the elite AB that he once was, where it's worth all the trouble. I mean, is it worth the headache and the drama and the storylines to get like a number 3 receiver who's going to catch 50 passes for you? Probably not. So, I mean, he certainly could play somewhere else, but I'm going to say that he's played his final down.
Yeah, I want to lean that way too. But however, if he was to land somewhere, I could maybe see it mid-season with a team like Carolina just grasping for straws or whatnot, and who would want that in their locker room? Because it's such a distraction. I mean, even from the day he signed, that becomes something that becomes a focal point for whatever team you're in. Going to have to answer questions about that kind of stuff, and I think teams look at it now like, we don't want that mess, because the Tiger's not going to change his stripes. And I think I said that right out of the chute with them way before I predicted they're probably going to be out of Pittsburgh there. It's a shame, because he's such a talented guy. You look back and you think about, man, the way he run routes, the way he would lean into defensive, but just some of the plays that he made. I mean, he was without a doubt unquestionable best wide receiver in the NFL for a period of time, and just what he's done, over the years is really kind of, dirtied that up a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of it for sure. So we'll see. But again, for a guy that burned all the bridges, now he wants to mend those bridges, and he's got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of bridges in Pittsburgh and a lot of bridges he burned his way out the door.
Right. I mean, look, I'm all about reconciliation and all like that. But I just don't think I think he said that on Twitter to kind of get a reaction for whatever, maybe this promotion of his event that he has at, here we are talking about it, promoting his event. Yep. So he got that out of it there. So kudos to that, but it's going to take a lot more than just saying, I'd like to retire a Steeler on Twitter, the few days ahead of you having a concert in Pittsburgh there. So a lot more is going to happen, going to have to happen for anything like that to happen. I think we're years away from even getting to that becoming serious discussion.
Right. So hopefully that'll end the AB talk for now. At least I'm sure it'll pop back up at some point. He gets on a podcast talking about the tweets, and it's now just this cyclical thing. So I'm looking forward to that conversation probably a month from now. Anything else here, Steelers-wise? Vince Williams hired as an assistant football coach at Pine Ridge High School. That was announced yesterday. So that's pretty cool. A very positive post-Steelers story there with Vince Williams.
Very nice. Boy, I'd hate to play that linebacking crew. Yeah. I'd hate to be a running back or whatnot playing that high school team there, but good for him. And I think sort of the narrative with Vince Williams is maybe him going the coaching route. And if this is step one for him, good for him. I could foresee 5-6 years from now, Vince Williams being on an NFL coaching staff. Quite honestly, I really could see that overall there. What do you think about some of the media interviews that these draft picks and all gave during the rookie minicamp and all?
Yeah, I thought Pickett had a good interview.
I thought he was excellent. I thought he really. Obviously you would expect your first round pick to kind of stick out in all these, but the two that just really impressed me the most was Pickett's the time that he talked to the media, and Calvin Austin. I really liked the media sessions that I saw with him. Really seems like a driven, good young kid. And chip on his shoulder and all like that. But those are two, and I thought, boy, Kenny looked like he's been. It's not new to him,
right? And it's not,
and that's the kind of stuff that you would expect. And moving on forward into the offseason, we'll see how this quarterback competition obviously plays out. That kind of stuff there. But him already being settled and comfortable with that aspect, which you obviously would expect that to be the case with him, playing his college career in Pittsburgh, and it's another kind of feather that's going to help him if indeed he winds up winning the quarterback competition for week one. But I was really impressed with the way he handled himself with those interviews there. And once again, I liked Calvin Austin as well too.
I understand that in 31 other cities and teams and fan bases where they're fawning over how the rookies look in shorts and shells and rookie minicamp, but with Pickett, what impressed me the most is one line in particular. And he talked about, and I think someone asked him about leading guys through some of the drills on the first day of practice. And he said, what did he say? Quote, I know how to operate. I know what it's supposed to look like at a high level. I voice an opinion to make sure we're trying to get to the same page. It's day one, but there's little things that can help guys out with communication and stuff like that. I think as the walkthrough went through, you saw that it got cleaner. So I'm happy with how that went and excited to compete now against the defense here. And so some of that's that leadership stuff, the take charge attitude, the clear vocal communication. And it's a small thing, but it's so important to see a guy who has that presence from day one, who's not afraid to kind of get in guys' ears a little bit and with constructive criticism. And, if it's not perfect, then he's not happy, and we're going to rep it until it is perfect. And so, again, I talked about, the X's and O's is going to be obviously a critical factor in determining who this team's starting quarterback will be in week one, but who's going to be the leader? Who's going to take charge of our young offense, an offense that's really had a big upheaval the last 24 months trying to replace Big Shoes in Big Ben. And so to see Pickett say some of those things so confidently and just start being that guy right away was a really encouraging sign.
Absolutely. And that kind of stuff will push the guy in front of him too right now. And Trubisky, who, is I think the general consensus is he's a good leader as well too there. So, and never hurts to have all quarterbacks worried about is the running back 6 inches off of his mark.
Right. Yep.
Details matter for sure. And if this 2022 Steelers team is going to compete, this season, it's going to be because they have their I's dotted and their T's crossed, quite consistently there, because they're going to have to overcome a lot of stuff there, and details is going to have to play a big part with this thing for the Steelers in 2022, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So absolutely. And that's great to see. And yeah, I mean, how much of it is hyperbole? You just can get a sense that Pickett understands the task at hand. He's mature. Yep. I envision him having a little bit of a firm grip, and really that being Kenny Pickett's minicamp, really. That's the guy that people listen to probably on both sides of the football there, as it should be. And that's kind of what we're hoping that you were drafting in a leader at this. And obviously if things go well for this team, Kenny Pickett's going to be the face of this franchise for the next at least decade, if not longer there. So that was good to hear. Just everything about kind of specifically the quote that you highlighted there with him, and just everything else, the way he carried himself. It didn't look like he was, fish out of the water in any sense of imagination. If anything, it looked like he's one of the veterans back, working with the rookie group there overall. So I thought that was good to see.
Right. Now, everything else, how did the guy look in practice and how did they throw the ball and run routes, to me is pretty meaningless. That's not really football evaluation right now. So I think somebody said he looks so composed and calm in the quote unquote pocket. That's all fluff to me. And I'm a guy that loves the details and every piece of information imaginable, but I even understand rookie minicamp. I'm not really focused on how a guy really looks overall, aside from some very baseline type stuff. And for the draft guys, it would mean a bit more, but not for your top draft class. But just hearing that from Pickett, the composure, the leadership, those are going to be things that is going to serve him and his team very well.
And I think it goes back to the things that Mike Tomlin says every year at this time. How do these guys retain information and put it to use over a quick weekend like that? I thought another thing that stuck out, everybody's talked so much about DeMarvin Leal and his weight and all like that. And he's probably reading his own press, and he's probably using the weight gain 3,000 and and all like that, because he thinks that's what, he's reading that and he thinks that's the primary goal there. And Mike Thomas says, look, I could care less about his weight right now. I just want to see how the guy moves and probably how the guy retains information if he lines up in the right spot. That's the biggest part of this offseason, showing up 15 pounds heavier, it's not going to mean anything if he's not lined up right most of the time throughout the rest of the weekend, and understand what his duties are and those kind of things there. So I thought Mike Tomlin, as usual, does a good job of kind of putting that stuff in perspective right out of shoot there. And it's more, look, we just want to look at these guys, see how they move in certain situations, see how they retain information, and then kind of go from there. Because once again, you're trying to get a lot done in a short amount of time with more than half of the people there that are all new to you as well too. So I imagine that weekend kind of went by in a blur overall.
For sure. I did have to laugh at Tomlin, though, saying, he said the quote in reference to Leal's weight gain, that sometimes you'll hear stuff from the NFL or other NFL people that talk about what you should be doing. The Steelers have said, Kevin Colbert said that Leal has to get bigger and stronger. And so the Steelers were saying those things. So that's what Leal's probably taking the cue from. So I had to laugh at Tomlin being like, yeah, the NFL will sometimes say things. I'm like, Tomlin, you're saying this. Your organization is saying this. And that's why Leal has gained weight. He needs to do that. But Tomlin's also right. This weekend's purpose was to figure out what makes you tick, how you learn, what type of person you are, very baseline install stuff. How does an NFL practice work overall? Getting to know the coaching staff, getting to know your teammates, positional coach, stuff like that. It's a little bit less about where you're at weight-wise.
All
right, Dave, I think that's kind of basically everything that I had. Anything else to talk about that you wanted to mention?
Did anything else? Which way was I going to go with this? I think we talked about the draft picks and all like that. Where would you like to see this team move forward? I mean, because now we got a few days here before the OTAs get started and all like that. Where is this team still lacking? Outside linebacker depth has got to be one of those things, right?
Yeah, I think edge depth is something to look at. Running back, could you add another running back? I certainly wouldn't be against it, a veteran type of guy. I was asked this last night though on the live stream, and I think it's a little less about the outsiders and more about the divisional labor of the guys already on the roster. How's this offensive line going to work? Who's going to play where and how well they're going to play? The secondary, who's going to work in the slot, who's going to be part of your dime packages? How does, the division of labor between Wallace and Witherspoon and Sutton, how does that look and play out? I think that's going to be important overall. Stephon Tuitt, what's his status? A big internal question. So I think for the Steelers, it's more about figuring out some of those position battles and alignments and looks of guys already on the team as opposed to what free agent can you add.
All right, and I think the OTAs get started. What do we say? 24th, is that right?
Yes, so that's the date for Tuitt that I'm really interested in.
Right, that's what I think we're going to kind of circle right now. I know there's been a lot of talk, a lot more talk about what about the whole Jesse Bates thing with Cincinnati. I know that's another different team here, but I really think that's something worth watching right now because Jesse Bates I think is wearing that franchise tag right now, and he's saying I'm not playing underneath the franchise tag in 2022, and Steeler fans should be well aware of kind of the dates that are associated with that. When we're still ways off from it because I think it's the middle of July. Was it July 14th? 15th. That's the deadline for teams to have franchise tagged players signed to long-term deals, or else they have to play under the tag at that point. And I think Jesse Bates has been pretty animate for a while now. We all know how, the history of the Bengals franchise and how they deal. This might end up being a come to Jesus moment with the way the Bengals wind up doing business, with top of the market players, kind of similarly the way the Steelers were doing it last year with Watt. Now, obviously, the difference is the Steelers had up until week 1 of the season. Obviously had longer than that technically, but by the way the Steelers do business, they like to get all that stuff done by week 1 there, whereas the Bengals have until the middle of July. And much like the Steelers with Le'Veon Bell several years ago there. So I think that's a date really to circle on the calendar there. And here's the thing too, if indeed they do get a deal done with Jesse Bates, you would think that the guaranteed money, it'd be at least like the first 2 years, right? Even though the Bengals don't like doing that kind of stuff. Could Jesse Bates be the one that gets them to cave? And if indeed so, well, at that point, we'll have a real good measuring stick. Although we already have a good idea what the Minkah Fitzpatrick contract is probably going to look like at this point. You get that deal if they get that deal with Bates done by the middle of July, we'll have a lot better idea what a Minkah Fitzpatrick deal will look like.
Yeah, we would. I mean, obviously, I still expect Minkah to be the highest paid safety in football, regardless of what Bates does or does not get, if a deal does or does not get done. It's interesting. I mean, I hadn't thought about it too much, but they tag Bates, they can't get a deal done, and then they draft Dax Hill, the best free safety in this class in the first round at pick 31. So I'm sure Bates is not feeling too great about his status with the team right now, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if a deal will get done or not, but we'll find out.
You think they would think there's any chance they would deal a player on the tag? Who was it, like Jared Allen several years ago? Wasn't he a tag player that was dealt while wearing the tag and then ended up signing a new deal? I wonder if that's something that the Bengals might consider.
It's pretty rare, and I think they want to see what they have in Dax Hill, but I guess it would depend on how adamant the Bates is about not playing on the tag. Is he going to go the Bell route and say, I'm not going to play? Or is this just kind of, because this is probably a lot of posturing right now. So we'll see if they can really kind of walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
And let's see, do you think he has a chance at least topping 16 million, which is what Harrison Smith at 33 years of age is making right now? Justin Simmons at 15.25 million. You would think that Jesse Bates at a minimum wants to come away from this thing with being at least the second highest paid safety in the league, right?
I mean, I'm sure he wants to do that. Is he worth that? And even in the sense of, when everyone's trying to one up the other contract, because he was not perfect last year. Like he definitely had his struggles last year, but of course they do tag him, so that kind of tells you what they think about him value wise. My guess, and I've not really studied the situation much. I think he comes in a little bit below Simmons in terms of what he'll actually get.
Okay. And on the tag, I think it's like 12.911 million for him right now. And I can guarantee you this, a long-term deal is not going to come in lower than 12.911. I think he's right now, even at that tag number, is what, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth highest paid safety in the league overall. So you saying maybe around 15 million for him, which would be one spot less than Justin Simmons?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is my very uneducated guess, but I think he'll come in right below Simmons.
And he's probably going to want at least first 2 years of that thing fully guaranteed. Can't blame him for that.
Right. I mean, the Bengals, obviously, they're very old school. It's kind of the Bengals, Packers, and Steelers who try to, structure these deals very conservatively, but Pittsburgh's changing, and we'll see if the Bengals change as well.
Absolutely. And once again, they have until the middle of July, but that's worth talking about and circling on the calendar because it being topical on the heels of what supposedly is being reported about Jesse Bates right now.
Quick question. I saw on the Pickens contract, the second year base salary was fully guaranteed. Is that common? Is that new?
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the norm there.
Okay.
Let me look back here real quick. Who was the second round pick last year for the Steelers?
Pat Freiermuth?
Right, Pat Freiermuth. Let me see yeah, he had guaranteed his base salary for 2022 is fully guaranteed. Pat Freiermuth is. So
is that like codified by the CBA? Or is that just kind of the way that teams have been doing deals for a while now, I guess?
I think it's pretty common with second round guys up until a certain number. So it'd be a better question for Joel Corey league wide, because I obviously watch the Steelers, but I wasn't floored by the fact that second round draft pick for the Steelers had his second year fully guaranteed there.
Okay.
Looking back, gotcha. Who was the one before that?
Claypool.
Was it Claypool?
Yeah, now he was the first player drafted, but he was a second round pick.
But I mean, it still goes by the slotting and all like that. Let me look real quick on him. Yeah, that his second year last year was fully guaranteed as well too.
Okay, so I guess that's common. I saw that and I just went, is that new or is that just the way that business has been done? So that's the latter. Okay, good deal. If there's nothing else, Dave, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
Oh, I forgot about that portion of it here. Let me sort this out here real quick. Chris Lookart writes in, if I'm the Steelers, I would either try to sign D Johnson to a long-term deal that I'm okay with, or I would see what his value is in the open market. Why would you keep a guy if you decide you're not going to retain him for the next few years, especially if you see big things happening with Pickens and a team or to have a top wide receiver go down with injury? His value would inflate at that point. I like him and would prefer to keep him, but I would rather get something for him looking at long-term plan than they have him play out his contract and not be compensated for it after this year. Chris, you forget how the compensatory draft pick process works out here. Yeah, you could probably deal him this offseason and I don't know, maybe get a second round pick for him?
Something like that, but do you want to start shedding yourself of weapons for your potentially rookie or at least new quarterback? Not a good situation to put yourself in.
Right. And look, Pickens and Austin, I mean, it's great to be excited about those guys, but they haven't played yet.
Right.
And the Steelers are in this thing to make the playoffs every year and try to win the Super Bowl. They definitely wouldn't be able to do that without a guy like Deontay Johnson, I don't think. So look, I don't like the odds of them signing Deontay Johnson to a long-term deal. Now it is a little bit different now because you don't have the franchise quarterback contract that you're dealing with. But hey, you got a franchise outside linebacker and Watt that you're paying. Top of the league, top paid defensive money in the league. Minkah Fitzpatrick come week one is going to probably be the highest paid safety in the league on top of it. So, you start taking those things into consideration. It quickly, trumps the fact that you don't have a franchise quarterback under contract there. And I've said it several times with Deontay Johnson. It's hard to imagine him, not wanting to come out of this thing, maybe top 5 highest paid wide receiver in the league. And the Steelers just don't have great history when it comes to doing stuff like that overall there. Might it change? We'll see. But if they don't get a long-term deal worked out with Deontay Johnson, he's still got a lot of incentive to be the league's best wide receiver in 2022 because he wants to hit the offseason, with him being unquestionably the best receiver in the league. That way he can, easily crack, I don't know, $25 million a season, a year next year along those lines. And on the flip side, look, just because you don't get anything, as Kevin Colbert always liked to say, we decide when the player leaves. Mm-hmm. So if you don't get a deal done with him this offseason and he blows it up and becomes the best wide receiver in the NFL, you still have the franchise tag at your discretion to use next offseason there. Now,
right, and they'll have some cap space that they can apply that and not squeeze themselves.
Right, absolutely. So I know it's easy to kind of look at this with long-term glasses on in a short-term situation here, but I personally would not recommend them dealing Deontay Johnson now.
I wouldn't either, and I really do not expect that to happen. They want him as a Steeler to perform, to play well, to be the top, volume receiver on this team, to be that weapon for whoever is at quarterback. And as you said, if you do lose him, you get a comp pick a couple of years from now. But the intent is to let him be the number 1 receiver on this team.
Let's see. Jim Bendis, just curious. I always assumed that all NFL football players have agents. Do they? I think there's a few out there that try to negotiate for themselves, right?
Yeah. Lamar doesn't have an agent.
Right. And who, obviously the percentage is super, super small, but I think there's a few kids out there that players out there that don't have agents there. He says, do the tryout players have agents? Generally, yes, but I'm not going to sit here and say all tryout players have agents. Now, normally the agents that a lot of these lower end kind of players, tryout players have, are guys that you've never kind of heard of before, Yeah,
like their uncle who knows a guy, one of those things.
Right. But, most of them, I think, do have agents. He says, does Antonio Brown still have one? Yeah, I think who's Antonio Brown with now? He switched from Rose. I can't remember who he's with right now.
It's not Rosenhaus. You
got no. I don't know.
Wazalewski.
Is that who it is right now?
That's the internet. It's quickly telling me. I mean, it can probably change on a daily basis, so I don't know. But yeah, Bobby Wagner doesn't have an agent. Russell Okung doesn't have an agent. So I mean, there's a couple guys, and some guys, even if you don't have an agent, you have a lawyer who looks over contracts and those, the legalese of it all. So some guys will use a lawyer instead of an actual full-blown NFL agent, but it is pretty rare, as you said.
Let's see, from 6 days ago, I think we already did this. Let's see, one comment on Tuesday, many people, including NFL Network, do not consider Minkah Fitzpatrick as part of the first-round picks for the Steelers when evaluating Colbert's legacy. He says, in my honest opinion, Minkah simply must be included as a 2020 first-round pick. He is a home run hitter. I guarantee that if Minkah bombed in Pittsburgh, he would count. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. A lot of people won't, when you look at the draft picks and draft picks alone, and that's how most of these people seem to be judging it. A lot of people not willing to put. It's not that I think a lot of people forget to add Minkah to that. It's just one of those asterisk type situation. I mean, look. I mean, the fact that the Steelers got Minkah for what they got him for, and it does basically become a first round draft pick for the Steelers.
It does. I mean, there's I've had a lot of back and forth over the years about does he count, but if you're just talking Kevin Colbert's legacy, big picture, then obviously Minkah is part of that, whether you want to slot him as a first-round pick or not. And so that was one of the best deals Kevin Colbert's ever made.
He goes on to say, you guys are killing it at SD. I love the articles this week, especially the ones on Pickett, 10 to 19 yards, and Pickens. I think you guys had something on him too. This quality and quantity of work is not available anywhere else. That's the way we intend to keep it, Pastor Joe Green. What do you think about the the post that Andrew did on the time to throw with Pickett.
Yeah, that was good to break it down based on, 0 to 9. I think he did it by depth and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if there was groundbreaking news to learn in terms of like what is the central reason for that, but it was just good to kind of stratify some of those numbers. And again, I don't think it was addressed in the post, but I just wonder if the lack of RPOs, because after we talked about that last week, you sent me the article about RPOs
Right.
and Pickett had so few of them and other guys had so many that I wonder if that partially influences some of these numbers.
We'll see more RPOs with Pickett, right? At least in his rookie
Yes.
season, you would think, right?
Yes, I agree.
The offense in general is going to be fairly heavy on RPOs, one would think. So
I would think so.
And that means getting rid of the ball a lot quicker than what he's had to do the last couple of years at University of Pittsburgh. Todd Gensler writes in, "Hey guys, I really enjoyed the breakdown of broken plays that you did on Pickett. I was wondering how his 21 of 36 effort compares to previous top quarterbacks over the past few years." Oh Lord. I think I tried to provide some context in the broken plays, didn't I?
You did. I guess he's just asking about compared to other quarterbacks from different classes is what he's looking at there.
Look, I think that hopefully that provided enough context in there overall. Once again, I think some of the takeaways that Alex discussed about that, based on the actual tape versus the context of the numbers, were spot on. I don't feel like I'm wanting or need even more context to the previous top quarterbacks over the past few years. I mean, I'm assuming he's talking about the NFL level as well too, because you're not comparing apples to apples in those situations either.
Yeah, I thought he was asking like, what did the other college top what were Joe Burrow's numbers, for example, back in his last year at LSU? That's probably what I thought he was asking.
All right, maybe I'll address that at some point later in the offseason here. Second, do you think Trubisky even has an actual chance this year? He says, with Pickett as a shiny new toy, I really think there has to be a coaching bias towards getting him on the field and soon. Trubisky being nothing less than flawless is his only shot, he says he believes. Pickett and Trubisky are so similar, franchise has to invest in their number one pick at all costs, and he's our future until he proves otherwise. He says, as far as concerned about his lack of arm strength, he says, I'm concerned too. I think of so many players like Haskins and Paxton Lynch, amongst others, that could figure out defenses, but that couldn't figure out defenses, but had a cannon for an arm. Excited to see what next season brings. Should be fun to watch. Todd writes. Look, I mean, we're not throwing Trubisky out with the bathwater just yet, but if indeed he is QB1 breaking, going into the regular season, we talked about this first 6 games early in this show. If you come out of that, 3 or 3 and better, I think Trubisky maybe holds on to his job. If you don't, especially by the bye week, I think we could see Pickett in there. As I've said several times, I think Alex kind of agrees with me, and most people would agree as well too. I don't see the gap being that. There is a gap, obviously, between Trubisky's experience and Pickett's lack of experience here. But I don't foresee this being a huge gap that Pickett has in front of him to close. Now, obviously, if Pickett gets off to a rough start at the start of training camp, I do view this more as Trubisky's job to lose, I think. But, and that could potentially happen. I don't think the gap's there. So does Trubisky have an actual chance this year? Yeah, I think he does. But that chance is begins right at the OTAs and on through training camp. He unquestionably has to be the best quarterback, I think, of the group there. And then you get through those first 3-6 games of the season, I imagine the leash is going to be kind of short on him, especially if this team is not winning.
Sure. I understand the reader's question about the incentive to play Pickett to see how your first round pick looks, and he's the pro ready guy, and so give him a shot and allow him to take his lumps early. But I will trust Pittsburgh to truly pick the best guy, because for all their awards, they do often just pick the best guy. I mean, this is a different type of example, obviously, but when they drafted Colin Holba, the long snapper, years back, and he lost his job to Cameron Kennedy, they didn't let the draft pick dictate who the guy was. And that sucks, cutting a long snapper, a 6th-round pick immediately, because you envision him being the guy when you drafted him. But you just picked the best guy overall, regardless of status. And so, these guys, to me, Trubisky, Pickett, they're pretty equal going into the summer, and truly whoever plays the best is going to be the guy right away. Now, again, Pickett's the long-term future, and I think I'm with you, Dave. Trubisky, this is going to be his only year in Pittsburgh. He's not going to be a Steeler in 2023, but he could still be the guy at least to start this season.
And as far as lack of arm strength with any of them, as I've said right from the get-go, Pickett's going to win at the NFL level because of factors other than his arm strength. If he's going to win, he is going to have to be, as cerebral as, probably not as cerebral, but close, as hopefully as close. He is really going to have to be a cerebral quarterback, I think, at the NFL level, to have success, especially some success early on. Now, look, we all saw how quickly things happened for the Bengals and Joe Burrow, and now what's going to be even more interesting with the Bengals and all is, we talk about, how these young quarterbacks, you get into that third year after they've had a little bit of success, and there's tape on them, how are they adjusted to, So this is really a big year in my mind for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow can really come out and make himself a top 5 or top 8 quarterback in the NFL this year. Then I think he's over the hump at that point. Then you really got to think, man, Joe Burrow is going to be around and be a guy that you got to contend with, for the next however many years there. And I think obviously you want to get to a discussion after year 2 with Kenny Pickett, after year 3 at the latest, where you're wondering, all right, maybe he's over the hump.
Right. But for the here and now, again, it goes back to who's going to take care of the football, run the offense the way the candidate sees fit, and who's going to be that leader in that presence and be just the face and the guy willing and able to step up. To me, that's going to determine who's going to be your quarterback against the Bengals week 1.
Look, Alex is going to be at training camp chart and all that stuff, and Alex will be able to tell us how close that quarterback competition is.
Yeah, the reps in particular. I mean, you got to get these guys reps too. It'll be really interesting to see how those get divvied up. Mason Rudolph's going to get about 4 snaps in camp this year because these guys need all the reps in the world. You know what you have in Mason, and so Mason's going to get the heavy Josh Dobbs treatment. I
mean, you only have three preseason games as well too. Mason better get used to not getting his jersey dirty, I don't think.
Yeah, everyone laughed at me for charting quarterback reps last year, but I'll be vindicated because I can do a little compare contrast. And even for, with Rudolph, because with Ben last year, you got the Ben full day, half day, off day. So there were times where your other quarterbacks would get more reps. There are no rest days this year. Pickett and Trubisky, barring injury, are going to be practicing every single day. They're going to be running first and second team, doing all the situational drills they should be. So you got to get those guys as much time as possible to give yourself the best evaluation possible to make the best decision possible.
Revenge of the Nerds.
We're back at St. Vincent.
What happened to your sons, Alex?
Oh, just the biggest choke job ever. I mean, there was the Pens and Suns losing on the same night in Game 7. It was a very, very bad night to be me. So yeah, just Luka had as many points as the Suns at halftime. They could not shoot. They went ice cold. Ayton's got into a fight with Monty Williams. It's all bad.
What did you think about the Penguins' downfall there after being up? What were they, 3-1?
Right, and had leads in, I think, all the ensuing games, including Game 7. And so we had 5 minutes left. You're up a goal. You feel like you got Jari. You're going to do well. You're going to win the game. I mean, is this the end for Malkin and Letang? And obviously Crosby's going to stay, but that whole group, is this the end for them? That's the big question. I have no idea.
And I think it might be, to be honest with you. I mean, some things can't last forever there. What about Mike Sullivan at this point? Have a problem kicking that door in, much like Mike Tomlin the last several years. There's a lot of similarities kind of happening around the same time here with the Steelers and the Penguins, right?
Yeah, I think Sullivan stays. I'm not too concerned about that. But the last time a Pittsburgh team won in the playoffs, it was, 2017? I mean, it's been a while. It's been too long, which has been strange because these teams have been in the playoffs. They just haven't won in the playoffs.
Right. So it's gonna be interesting. And then you have the Pirates getting no hit and winning.
Hey, yeah, that's only the Pirates.
Right. And I think you'll be going to a game this weekend, right? So if you see Alex, you should be able to pick Alex out at PNC Park.
I'm going on fireworks tonight, so there's actually going to be a crowd, not for the team, but just for the fireworks show.
Oh, okay. If you see Alex, buy him a bottle of water.
Yeah, there you go.
That's about what you drink, isn't it?
That's what I do. I try to be. That's the one healthy thing I do. I drink just a lot of water.
All right. What else we got going on the rest of this week now?
I think we'll probably do a show
on Friday.
Yeah, Friday probably feels right there. And then we'll see the GM search as well. Were you on vacation when they interviewed a couple of the guys?
Yeah.
They were names that were already known. I think
Right.
Cowden and Spytech, which have already been reported, now officially interviewing Andy Lytle as well. Interestingly, I forget who it was, but there was one guy in tryout that was with the Eagles in their tryout minicamp last weekend, and said a Steelers personnel guy was there and invited him to the Steelers minicamp. I don't know. Is that Andy Lytle? I mean, because what Steelers guy would possibly be at Eagles minicamp? How would you ever let that guy into your facility to watch practice?
Interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I forget who it was, but somebody said a Steelers personnel was there, called him the next day, invited him to Pittsburgh minicamp. And I don't know what the situation there is, but is that Andy Lytle? Is that a hint that he's going to be the GM? Maybe I'm reaching, but I'm just saying.
All right. With that, Alex and I'll be back on Friday. And in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Shout out to the rest of the Steelers Depot fine crew for making it where I could take a couple of days off there. Like I did. Alex, you did a great job as usual, overseeing things. And I certainly do appreciate that. The great Matthew Marksey, always on top of things. Josh Carney. Just such a great crew that we have putting out the content. Jonathan Heitritter, just all the guys put out great content right and left, even in the off season here in the middle of May. So with that, if you have an email, go send it to theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. Also, if you don't want an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upright navigational bar. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.